Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome to another episode of Two Political Islands. I am Phoebe J. Rose, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, Leslie. Say hello, Leslie.
Hello, folks.
And today, we are not a conspiracy. We are honestly not a conspiracy channel. We are not a conspiracy podcast, but today, we are talking about somebody who thinks it is a conspiracy. And that covering this topic today because we are a libertarian-leaning podcast. We have leanings towards the Libertarian Party, and as you may or may not know, John McAfee was a lifelong member of the Libertarian Party and ran for the presidency for the Libertarian Party in 2016 and 2020, although he wasn't the candidate in either of those. So without further ado, I shall hand over to my wonderful co-host, Leslie, who shall talk a little bit about our main feature today, that is John McAfee, his life and times.
Little bit of background on John. He was born in Gloucester, United Kingdom on September 18th, 1945. He was born on a U.S. Army base. His father was stationed there, and his mother was British. Now, when he was 15, his father, whom the BBC described as an abusive alcoholic, killed himself with a gun. McAfee was employed as a programmer for NASA's Institute for Space Studies in New York from 1968 to 1970, and working on the Apollo program. Now, from there, he went on to UNIVAC as a software designer and later to Xerox as an operating systems architect. And then in 1978, he joined Computer Sciences Corporation as a software consultant. And he worked for the consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton from 1980 to 1982. Now, in 1980, while he was employed with Lockheed, he received a copy of Brain, which was the first computer virus for PC. And then he began developing his software to combat viruses as a whole, which, later to be McAfee security antivirus systems.
So let's just take a step back for a second and let's talk about the man himself before he became the computer software and antivirus man that we all knew him for, and for some of us knew him as the politician he was later in life. So he was born in Gloucestershire in England, but he was raised in Salem, Virginia. And in 1967, he graduated from Roanoke College with a degree in mathematics. And this degree in mathematics led him to begin working towards a PhD in mathematics at Northwest Louisiana State College. He didn't get his PhD because he was expelled. Why was he expelled? He was having it off with an undergrad. And the college went, that's a no-no, and you can get out. Little did the college know that this undergrad that he was having it off with would be his first wife. The identity of his first wife has never been publicly known, and we on this podcast will not be speculating on the rumours as to who this person is. But in total, good old John was married a total of 3 times. It's unknown when he divorced his first wife, but he married his second wife, an American Airlines flight attendant named Judy, in 1987. And that tryst lasted until 2002. And then his third wife was a woman that he solicited the day he returned to America, having been extradited from Guatemala. So his third wife was his prostitute. McAfee has claimed throughout his life that he was the father of 47 biological children, though there is no way of being able to confirm this. McAfee had a long and varied career in cybersecurity, and aside from working at NASA, where he held a series of numerous technology job companies, he turned his coding skills to developing the first antivirus program. This was devised after he realized the best way to combat the spread of virus programs was with an antivirus program, just like you would with a virus and a vaccine. So in 1987, McAfee founded his own company to create and distribute antivirus products, that is the famous McAfee Associates, and his business model upended the whole market. He gave the product away for free if you were an individual and didn't use it for commercial purposes. If you were a company, you had to pay a licensing fee. And the industry saw this as completely insane, according to Business Insider. And the industry didn't know how to respond to it, but it paid off for him. And in 1989, McAfee left Lockheed and committed to working full-time at McAfee Associates. And he continued there until 1994, as he put it, to seek out new challenges. Shortly after leaving McAfee, he developed his first new venture, which was a company called Tribal Voices, which helped set up the first instant messaging program, or one of the first instant messaging programs, in 1994. And in 2000, he joined Zone Labs, where he helped developing the burgeoning firewall industry at the peak of the dot-com bubble. And not only did McAfee have an interest in computers, but he was also heavily interested in politics.
Right, and he was a lifelong member of the Libertarian Party, except for a brief period of time between 2015 and 2016, where he was a member of the lesser-known Cyber Party. In September 8th, 2015, McAfee announced that he was going to take a bid for the presidential candidate of the United States in the 2016 election with the Cyber Party. Now, on December 24th of 2015, he re-announced his candidacy bid, saying that he would instead seek the presidential nomination for the Libertarian Party. Now, on the campaign trail, he consistently pulled alongside the other candidates, Gary Johnson and Austin Peterson, and the three partook in the Libertarians' first nationally televised presidential debate on the 29th of March of 2016. Now, his running mate, Judd Weiss, was a photographer and a commercial real estate broker and a libertarian activist. McAfee came in second in the primaries in 2016 at the National Convention. And he said he'd make a bid for the 2020 election with the Libertarian Party, or a separate party that he would create. So he did tweet about that as well. He said the campaign is, as of this day, I'm in exile. I am being charged with using cryptocurrencies in criminal acts against the U.S. government, and more videos shortly be coming. So stay tuned on that. So he later chose to run as a libertarian and stated he would continue his campaign in exile following the reports that he, his wife, and his 4 campaign staffers were indicted for tax-related felonies by the IRS. He said he was in international waters and previously tweeted that he was going to Venezuela. Now, around the same time, he did defend the communist revolutionary Che Guevara on Twitter, putting him at odds with the Libertarian National Chairman. And this was his tweet: "If you call Che Guevara a terrorist, you show your ignorance and your acceptance of the U.S. government's propaganda and lies. If you have not read his diary or know nothing of his life, then it would be best for you to keep your mouth shut on my page." So as you can imagine, that did not make the Libertarian Committee happy. And the chairman, Nicholas Sowark, wrote, "I hear very little buzz about McAfee this time around. Making it offensive Che Guevara from Cuba may integrate him with Cuban government, but it doesn't resonate well with the Libertarians." No surprise there.
Let's just pause there for a second, because he seems like your run-of-the-mill, wealthy, for want of a better language, wealthy wacko, I do excuse my language there, that has a bit more money, has a bit more time, has some eccentricities, and does some bizarre things as he moves on later in life. Having researched him with you, he was a very interesting character before we get to the stuff that's even more interesting later on. And I find him to be a fascinating individual because he starts off with a very challenging upbringing, and he moves through to being a very successful businessman, to then becoming one of your fairly standard, as it is nowadays, Silicon Valley politicians. That's the impression I got. Did you get any other impressions from him?
You know, he's an enigma, to say the very least. I mean, he's so complex, and he also, while he was, on the social media, he still was pretty much of, a recluse in terms of, being out there in the public. So hard to figure out a person like that. I mean, we get snippets of what we see. We get, since he wasn't really as active on social media, it's easier to, accentuate the crazy in the person, and not really the essence of who he was. And it's really hard sometimes with people that are just that bright, because I mean, the man was not stupid. Not stupid in the least, but there's an element of crazy that comes along with that in some individuals. And I think he firmly fits into that category of incredibly brilliant, but just with a dash of crazy in there, and it's,
as I see a lot of parallels with the way that he was portrayed within the media, with Michael Jackson, brilliant singer, but portrayed in the media as an eccentric, as somebody who had all of the difficulties, but you never really knew who Michael Jackson was. Just like I don't think anyone ever really knew who John McAfee was.
Right.
And yes, John McAfee could still walk down the street, whereas Michael Jackson couldn't really walk down the street. But the parallels between the way the media portrayed the two of them, I found was very striking, because they both were held up to be individuals that were larger than life. Both brilliant in their fields. Michael Jackson, one of the greatest pop singers that's ever going to have existed, in my opinion. John McAfee, one of the greatest people in antivirus that's ever going to exist, in my opinion. Both of them true pioneers. And both of them were portrayed very strangely, very bizarrely by the media. Right. And I think that contributes to the personality that we see of these eccentric human beings and these eccentric individuals, whereas we will never actually know what was going on behind the curtain.
Right. And there's an old saying, when you're hanging off a cliff by your fingernails, you don't go waving your arms around. If it were me, if I were living any type of eccentric life, I certainly wouldn't run for president. Where you can just have your life flayed open and combat the amount of information that's being put out there. I mean, the Che Guevara tweet, come on. Do you really have to read Che's diary to know who he was? Can't we just look at his actions?
There will be people out there that will agree with his political ends, and I'm going to disagree with you on his political ends. But as an individual human being, I think we can both agree that his actions were reprehensible. And if you can't see that his actions were reprehensible, then I'm afraid you and I are going to have difficulties seeing eye to eye. I can see the differences about his politics, and I can understand everyone's got their own individual politics, but some of the actions undertaken by Guevara were not the actions of a humanitarian, shall we say. It's one of those things. It's like you look at that tweet and it's like, my God, you shouldn't have done that. It's like, you may even believe that may be your heartfelt belief, but Jesus Christmas, don't even. Just there was
don't.
An element of tone deafness about that tweet.
For God's sakes. Yeah. So that, he didn't ingratiate himself to, the rest of the Libertarian Party. Yeah. And when I wouldn't even, say establishment as in, you got to toe this line. No, he colored outside of the lines in many areas. That was just one coloring stroke too far. You crossed a line. So, at that point, I would have just gone, oops, I screwed up, shut up and go away and try and hide. It's like, but no, not our John.
Yeah. Oh no! I mean,
No.
whilst he may have had an interesting life, from what we've talked about already, what I'm about to go into, science fiction has nothing on this.
Yeah.
So, in 2008, John decided to do what we had been imploring him to do. He decided that it was retirement time, and Belize was that place to go and retire. So, in 2008, he relocated to the North Island of San Pedro in Belize, and he stated publicly that his aim of retiring, and in his own words, he expected to be fishing, scuba diving, sailing, and otherwise enjoying the declining years of my life. But this lasted a few months. Our John is a businessman, and moving to the North Island of San Pedro, it's not the most developed place in the world, and the only way to get around was by ferry. So he decided that the existing ferry service was not up to snuff, so he set up his own ferry service. Problem was, John was too successful here, and he put the other company out of business within 3 months. He stated that the reasons why he put the other company out of business was that he offered lower prices, punctuality, new boats, and free travel for those going to and from school. And he said the other company was unreliable, old, and expensive. So, what did people expect was going to happen?
Yeah.
But he attributes this to him becoming a persona non grata, or the seed of him becoming a persona non grata, because the Canadian businessman who ran the company that he sank was pretty well connected within the government of Belize. But John didn't just found this one company. He founded a whole host of companies, a sports rental company, a coffee company, antibiotic research centre, and so on. And McAfee states that these companies were all run by and for the benefits of locals. How much we can read into that, we'll never fully know, but filings do show that they were locally based and did have local individuals involved in them. And how much of a hand on the tiller he had, we don't quite know. But for John, his quiet life was not a lasting affair, as he made the mistake of wading into the politics of Belize. Don't do that. When you're a guest in a country, don't do that. He condemned the country as corrupt and said that the government was corrupt from top to bottom. Whether that's true or not is down to interpretation. It's probably not the best thing to do. So in 2011, it was revealed that 2 taped conversations in Creole were released, and these contained alleged plots to assassinate McAfee with links to the government of Belize. So let's just pause there for a second. So if I personally received these kinds of tapes or this kind of information, I wouldn't hang around in the country. I would pack my stuff up, even if I had invested heavily in the country, and if I valued my life more than I valued my material possessions, I would clear off fairly rapidly. John, that wasn't for him. He stayed put. But it got slightly worse for him. In 2012, an individual phoned him up and demanded $2 million, which he used some colourful language to them and told them where to go. And shortly after he told this person where to go, Belizean security forces turned up, detained him, shot his dog, destroyed some property of his. And then things turned sour. But he still didn't leave the country. So You've had these things from the government of Belize. And in my opinion, I would have cleared off at the first sight. But that's just me.
Me too.
And if you're in the audience going, yeah, I would do too, we're with you too.
Yeah.
But John decides to stay, and he, later that year, is embroiled in the death of a neighbour. Now, John and the government of Belize have two different stories on this. Government of Belize say John McAfee murdered the bloke. Or as they put it, he was a person of interest. John McAfee, on the other hand, says the government of Belize put out a hit on him, and they were so incompetent that they killed the neighbour instead of him because the neighbour was also American.
Oops.
So a big oops moment. So take your pick on whose side you agree on.
Flip a coin.
Or whether you fall somewhere in the middle, or whether you take a bit of that, and you take a bit of that, and you take a bit of that. Make your own mind up. But this was the time that he decided, I better clear off. So sensible John decides, I'm out of here. And he flees to the neighbouring country of Guatemala. And when he was in Guatemala, he said, here is some money for finding the person or persons responsible for the death of my neighbour. But John, being media man that he is, gave an interview to Vice News. And they took a photo of him. And they left the metadata on the photo. And the government of Guatemala scooped him up shortly afterwards. So he was involved in some protracted legal matters with the government of Guatemala. The government of Belize wanted to have him back. John went, don't fancy going back there. So he said, could I please go back to my country of citizenship, which is America? And eventually, after some protraction, the government of Guatemala said, you're going back to the United States.
And then at that point, so January 2019, with his wife and his bodyguards, he took a yacht to the Caribbean after hopping from the Bahamas to Cuba. He was detained in the Dominican Republic for carrying a high-caliber weapon. She many times posted multiple pictures of him with his firepower, ammunition and military-style gear without declaring them. Now, the Dominican authorities deported him at his request to England. Then this was shortly after a Florida court ordered McAfee to pay $25 million after ruling against him in a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Mr. Fall's estate.
Mr. Fall, in this case, is the gentleman in Guatemala who died.
Okay. And so an unsealed June 2020 indictment from the IRS accused McAfee of tax evasion and willful failure to file tax returns between 2014 and 2018. This is something McAfee's never, disputed, that he's, failed to file for income taxes. McAfee freely admitted the charges were accurate, saying, I have not in fact paid taxes for 10 years, and informed the IRS of his refusal to file returns in principle. Now, on October 4th, 2020, McAfee was arrested in Spain when he was about to board a plane to Turkey using his British passport. This was on a U.S. extradition warrant for failing to file tax returns for 4 years, despite earning millions from consulting work, speaking engagements, cryptocurrencies, and selling the rights to his life story. So now on June 23rd, McAfee was found dead in his prison cell. The reason was given as suicide with no further details. McAfee reportedly claimed that the U.S. government was after his hidden cryptocurrency and complained that his pals had evaporated. So there was a quick video here of McAfee, and it's kind of dovetails into this portion as well.
January 22nd, 2019. For 2 years, I've been speaking at conferences around the world and writing and making videos about the fact that cryptocurrency will at some point come head to head with governments. Why? Because when privacy coins are widely used, governments will no longer be able to collect income taxes, meaning governments will have to shrink and find new means. And I've always said this is a good thing. And I've said we will at some point be at war. We are today at war. I have not paid taxes for 8 years. I've made no secret of it. I have not filed returns. Every year I tell the IRS I'm not filing a return. I have no intention of doing so. Come and find me. Not illegal. Today, January 22nd, the IRS has convened a grand jury in the state of Tennessee to charge myself, my wife, Mrs. McAfee, 4 of my campaign workers with unspecified IRS crimes of a felonious nature. Now, they want to silence me. I will not allow that. I am running my campaign in exile on this boat for the duration. I will not allow them to imprison me and shut my voice down, which they will do immediately. Why? I am a flight risk. Obviously, I am in flight. I will be putting videos out every day. Today, many, to explain to you what has happened. Today, crypto community, we are at war. And I am on the front lines. And I'll be saying more later. Thank you.
Now, McAfee he said that he was being charged by the IRS, but there were other clues that indicated that he would also may be on the run from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. Now, McAfee insisted, that he was not going to kill himself, going so far as to get a tattoo and posting a tweet of the tattoo statement that he would not kill himself, that he was in fact whacked. So in that tweet, he said, getting a subtle message from the U.S. officials saying, in effect, we're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to kill yourself, end quote. I got this tattoo today just in case. If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm. So McAfee reportedly had a suicide note in his pocket when he was found dead in his cell. That note has not been released. Janice McAfee, his wife, on Friday demanded a thorough investigation to his death, saying her husband did not appear suicidal when they last spoke. She had said, his last words to me were, I love you and I will call you in the evening. The 38-year-old told reporters she had recovered as she was recovering his belongings. And then she finalized that by saying, those words are not the words of somebody who is suicidal. She said of the conversation before his body was found.
So there's a lot to digest there.
A whole lot.
So we've looked into different aspects of this, but do you, from the evidence that you have seen, hold John McAfee himself as a credible individual who has credibility in this situation and in this story? Do you view him as credible?
In terms of the results, the results,
suicide? The build-up. Do you think he himself is a individual that should be taken credibly in this?
Without being able to nail down, how crazy is John? Because crazy, credibility, these can kind of, contradict one or the other. I don't find him not credible when it comes, in terms of, paying income taxes and, if we are supposed to or not, if that is something that is within the law that we have to do. I completely understand. And, I know people in the tax honesty movement, in fact, one individual, Dave Champion, who wrote probably the seminal book on income taxes themselves. Income Tax Shattering the Myth by Dave Champion. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence that says that the U.S. citizens are not liable for paying income tax. The way certain people go about it and do it aren't correct. Like buggering off to foreign countries to avoid this isn't probably the best move to make.
No. You also have the sovereign citizen movement, which continuously gets shot down in US courts, is another example of individuals that aren't taking the best approach to what they sincerely believe is their non-requirement to pay federal income tax. This is in spite of the constitutional amendment which explicitly allows the federal income tax.
Mm-hmm.
But if you yourself believe that you shouldn't be doing it, it doesn't mean that you are exempted from the requirements. You can go about it in different ways. It's like you can campaign for a constitutional amendment to repeal the amendment to the US Constitution. And you can do other things, but clearing off to Belize, Guatemala, England, Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, Cuba, Spain, and thumbing your nose at the system is not going to ingratiate yourself with the authorities, regardless of how you view those authorities.
Right. And there are aspects of his actions that chip away at his credibility. Statements, that level of eccentricities that you don't push to the forefront. I mean, it does chip away at, your credibility, your mental state. These are all things that he did to be able to open those doors to start chipping away at him. So whether I believe he was credible or not, I mean, there are certain aspects of, his political beliefs that I think he was spot on. But it's just, he's just attached himself to the crazy train, and it's like, you got to throw it out, especially within the Libertarian Party. I mean, we fight so hard, to make ourselves credible when people that are not extremely stable hitch themselves to our train. It just blows it up for the rest of us. It makes our traction so much harder. We get, who's the guy with the boot on his head? Vermin Supreme. Vermin Supreme. For God's sakes.
I have nothing against these individuals per se. But what I do have as an issue with some of these less credible individuals is the way that they are seen as what the party stands for. Mm-hmm. And they're seen as, this is the image of the party, when they're not. I understand Vermin Supreme. I know a fair amount about Mr. Supreme, and I understand why he does it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But from an optics point of view, it's not a great look. It's not a great look.
No. And again, like with Vermin Supreme, much like John, he's not a stupid man.
No, they're not.
He's extremely bright, but this personal little shtick that he's got, to poke at the government, it's like, why?
There are better ways of going about doing your advocacy.
Mm-hmm. If you really care, if you really give a shit, wire your shit tight and do it within the accepted channels. You can still disrupt things. You can still make all of those earth-shaking changes that you want to make without being a loon. I'm sorry, because I mean, the LP has fought so hard to get complete ballot access, fundraising, things like that. I mean, you're just undermining all the hard work that legitimate candidates are trying to make. And it's one of those things about the party, the striptease by the one guy that was at a convention. It's like, what are you doing?
Stop,
why didn't somebody get the hook and drag this moron off the stage? I mean, I get it, all about my freedoms. Well, God damn it. The rest of us want it too, but we actually want to get there.
I mean, I'm not a no-government libertarian.
No, neither am I.
I believe that there needs to be some form of government, because you can't, in my opinion, function with no government.
Right.
But I understand that there are individuals who are no government libertarians. But I do think that this does show that there is a level of maturation that is required within the Libertarian Party itself, within the Libertarian movement. And this was articulated very well on a show I watched last night when it came to the LGBT plus movement.
Mm-hmm.
The LGBT plus movement has matured enough to be able to disagree with itself and not disappear. At the moment, the Libertarian Party, in my opinion, has not got to the position where individuals like John McAfee aren't seen as the fringe. They're seen as the mainstream. So it hasn't reached that level of maturation where it could disagree with itself.
Right.
I'm not saying that we should be aiming to be a carbon copy of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party as the Libertarian Party. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party can disagree with themselves. Look at the Republican Party and how much it disagrees with the 45th President of the United States. It's still going.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter of the 44th Vice President of the United States is still a member of the Republican Party. Liz Cheney is still there. Donald Trump is still there. And the party hasn't dissolved. It can have that internal conflict. It can have that. But it seems that the maturation of the Libertarian Party isn't at that stage yet. So individuals like John McAfee get a lot of traction. He finished high up the ballot paper. And whether I agree or disagree with the politics of the candidate in 2012, 2016, 2020, those candidates were, fortunately, in my opinion, the, quote, credible candidates. They may not have been the best of candidates, but they gave a credible...
Right.
And in some cases, you want the publicity to be boring. You don't want the public to remember you as the lunatic party,
Right.
the conspiracy party, the party of extremity. And whilst John has done these things and he raised a lot of money for the party, I do think that his credibility is not high. There is parts of me that goes, there is potential that what he is saying is true. There's also parts of me that says that this was all elaborately staged by him and he was going to kill himself anyway.
Right.
He was 75 years old when he died, so he was not a young man. His wife was nearly 40 years younger than him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a lot of problems. So you have
Indeed.
to ask yourself, a man of that age, if he is convicted, is not seeing freedom again.
No.
He's not. So, does he go down with a whimper? Or does he go out in a bang? He's gone out with a bang because you and I are talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether I hold him to be credible or incredible or somewhere in between, he's got the effect that he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
He's got people talking about him. He's got people talking about his issues. And people are going to see it as, well, it was suspicious. Well, it wasn't great. Well, it was this. And he will always be remembered as that individual that was the brilliant man who died in unusual circumstances. But unfortunately, there are other individuals of recent time who weren't so brilliant, but also died in prison cells in suspicious circumstances that he's going to be associated with. So I do have to question a lot of his own actions. I have to look at them with a rational lens. Whereas the conspiracy theorist in me wants to believe in it, but the rational side of me goes, maybe not.
Right. Excuse me. Well, I look at it like this. I mean, going to the point of, actually getting a tattoo that's stating that you're going to be suicided. Do you go that far? I mean, how long is this con? If he actually did kill himself, had intended to do it all along, and just this was his last hurrah to disrupt the government, we can go down that path. The truth is, we will probably never know. I mean, in the case of, Epstein, where we had, cameras and that weren't working and, all of this type of stuff, guards that weren't keeping an eye on him. He was, McAfee was in a Spanish prison. I'm sure they didn't have, the 24-hour surveillance for, cameras in each cell. And this would have been a lot easier to pull off if they actually did kill him. The thing to me, the difference between like with Epstein and McAfee, Epstein had info on people. Okay. There were people that probably didn't want him to say anything. I can see that as being a contrived suicide more than McAfee. I mean, McAfee was just, he was just going to end up in prison. I mean, did he have a lot of details to spill the beans on him that people would want him dead?
Probably not.
Okay. It was just his own dipshit actions that got him in the trouble that he was in. So can I see that as being someone that they would want dead? No, not really.
If there's a line that comes to me that somebody once said about the O.J. Simpson trial. Never before has there been media coverage in the way that it is today. And yet even the kooks cannot agree. And I think that in this case, it's going to be one of those things that, unfortunately, I think John McAfee is going to go down as one of the kooks.
Mm-hmm. Because easily.
I think that he has overplayed and oversold his own hand.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst I am open-minded that, yes, maybe the government of Belize may have done some stuff, there were more reasons to keep him alive than there were to keep him dead.
Yeah.
For him to be dead. And the reasons behind that were he was a good publicity tool for the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
$25 million is owed to the estate of the gentleman who died in Belize, and the Belizean government want him for the investigation to that gentleman's death. So, in my opinion, there is more reasons to keep him alive than there are for him to no longer be on this mortal earth.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, let's even say, the incident in Belize, the Belizean police did shoot the neighbor and just tried to blame it on him. There's an easy walk back for that. It's like, oops, our bad.
Yeah.
It just isn't some massive conspiracy for, Belize to need to take him out. I just don't see how that connection could be made. Bottom line, do I think he killed himself or do I think the government killed him? I don't know. I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
I don't have the evidence to support one way or the other.
Exactly. So is something about it look a little weird? Yeah, it does. I mean, the point that he went to such extremes to say, no, I'm not going to do this. And then boom, it happens. It does make you go, but why?
Yeah.
Why?
So, yeah.
I don't see any evidence in there to indicate that a government would need to do this to him. I can't wrap my head around it.
I think that hopefully there'll be more evidence that comes out. because hopefully the Spanish authorities will release the details that help with this. But I don't think we'll ever know.
No.
And to those of you listening out there, make your own minds up on this one. Don't just listen to two ladies that are a continent and an ocean apart from each other. Look at it for yourself. We have tried to be as fair and as balanced as we can here. But it's one of those things that if it did happen and he was suicided as opposed to a suicide, then okay, because conspiracies do happen. But in my opinion, I am not convinced. But I have an open mind on this. And for those of you listening out there, all I ask is that you keep an open mind on this one. Don't believe the government. Don't believe McAfee just because they're the government or McAfee. Pick from both sides if you want to. Pick from neither side. Or if you're really that disinterested, just say that's what happens.
Right.
And move on.
And I think that also comes into play with a lot of things. You know, we have a tendency to need to make up our minds very quickly, you know, before we have all the details in order to be able to make up our minds. There's nothing wrong with waiting. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know, in the interim, I don't know. I want to know more first before I make a decision. Because, you know, I mean, things can come to light years later that it is like, oops, I was wrong. You know, so just wait. And then just not in this incident, incidents in general. You know, I only try to, you know, am I guilty of making snap decisions? Yes, but I try not to as much as possible. Looking at it, it's like, well, is there more that, you know, we could know before I make a decision? And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. Get back to me. Get back to me when there's more details. I'll be happy to make a decision when I feel comfortable enough with the information that I'm given. All the boxes are ticked, and I can say, this is my stance.
And on that note, I think that we have exhausted Mr. McAfee.
Yes, we have. We have.
And following on from what Leslie said, I do hope that you will choose to come back to us for our next episode, and you will continue to listen to us.
Right.
We are...
Which we don't know yet. This was kind of an impromptu thing. It's like, hey, we need to get and talk about this. So I know our next event was scheduled for the 14th of July. So we'll still plan on that one as well. But this was just kind of a snuck in there, and you know, let's just chat about this real quick because it was a hot topic.
And we do this because we enjoy doing it. And if you enjoy listening to us, please keep listening to us.
Yes. So until the 14th, we may slide in something sooner. Don't know, but the 14th is the next scheduled one in July. And, you know, hope folks are doing well and being safe in the meantime. Thank you for watching.
A goodbye from me and a goodbye from Leslie.
Bye-bye, folks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.